Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining, everybody. My name is Jeff, and today we're going to be talking about 5 whiskey brands that I truly miss. These are essentially things that I used to be able to drink, say 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that are no longer available on the shelf today. And what this list really shows is that it's easy to take some of these brands for granted. So you got to appreciate what is on the shelf and what you love today while you can still enjoy it, because nothing lasts forever. And I know many of you watching this have been in the bourbon game longer than I have. So I do want to see in the comments what brands you miss that you used to be able to get as well. So thank you for joining, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. All right. Now, I must say, this is probably one of the more challenging lists that I've tried to put together because I also needed to have these bottles on hand, mostly backup bottles that are not actually opened, in order to show you them and talk about them a little bit. So some of these I have been able to back up, whereas others, once I drink this bottle, it's gone forever. Unless I do something crazy like going out to Unicorn and spend $500 on a bottle. But we know that's not really my style. And if you're still here, hit that like and subscribe. We're talking about whiskey every single week, either through lists like this, blind reviews, trying to keep up with the latest releases, or doing our own barrel picks. And if you'd like to get more involved with Hello Again Whiskey Friends, check out links in the description to our free and private Facebook group. And also there's links to Patreon, which you can join for free, though we do really appreciate your support if you choose to support the channel. But this is where you can get the latest news about our upcoming barrel picks. Ooh, we have some great ones planned over the next couple months. So let's get into today's list. Number 5. This first brand is a great example of really not taking things for granted. And if you're in this game long enough, you've actually seen different brands get traded around these different distilleries, almost like baseball cards. Implying trading baseball cards is like still a thing that people do. I once traded a Ken Griffey rookie card back when I was like 6 years old. Totally regret that. In the same way that I regret when Brown-Forman sold Early Times to Sazerac. But if you look at Early Times here, it does say established in 1860, originally established by Jack Beam, but then shut down during Prohibition. Brown-Forman then acquired the brand in the 1920s. And then from there, it came in and out of their portfolio until they released this bottle and bond version around 2017. And when this was dropping, say circa 2017 to 2020, this one got a lot of buzz, particularly around our community who was doing a lot of blind flights, because this one was always a chameleon that completely outtasted its age, its profile. It always found a way to stand out in blinds, even against much higher priced competition. And it remained a darling for quite a while, though in 2021, it got acquired by Sazerac, with production now taking place at Barton. You'll no longer see the black caps. Now you'll see the blue caps. And people that have done comparisons of the whiskey that kind of came out circa 2017, 2020 versus what's available now, essentially this brand has somewhat lost its luster in the midst of that acquisition. This is personally my last backup, and I'll keep this one sealed probably for a little bit here. Maybe enjoy it in 15 years, 20 years. Be a fun one to come back to. Number 4. I feel like that first one was a little bit of an obvious choice. And while it's example that brands come and go, they change different distilleries, even the mash bills and what goes in the bottle can just change over time, either just through different master distillers and flavor creep and different ingredients and whatnot. Other times a brand can change what they're releasing just because it starts to make different business sense. And one of those is going to be Knob Creek, particularly during this era where they were dropping and allowing groups to select 14, 15-year-old single barrels and releasing those at 120 proof. It's probably hard to believe now, but essentially in this era, I would say between 2017 to 2020, you could regularly find these in stores across northern Kentucky in particular, selling 15-year-old single barrels of Knob Creek for $55. Now, even at the time, say around 2019, there were rumors that Knob Creek and Jim Beam were starting to cut off groups from being able to select these old barrels altogether. But even in the midst of these rumors, they kept hitting the shelves. Every time I saw it personally, I would buy one. Right now, I got about 4 backups left. I just opened one under the request of Darrell when we were in Rhode Island, picking our copper and cast single barrel back in February. But I could have picked up so many more. I could have bought cases of it at the time. And now the equivalence of this goes for what? $150, $200. And some of these single barrels were some of the best whiskey I've ever had. But eventually, Jim Beam came to the business decision that they could do stuff differently with their older whiskeys as the market started to pick up and older whiskeys became more sought after and the limited edition started. So instead of being able to buy these single barrels, instead you got releases like, let's say, the original Hardin's Creek, Jacob's Well. I mean, I bought this one. So this one was selected in September of 2019. So I bought this for $55 sometime at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020. And then it was around probably the summer of 2020 that Knob Creek released a 15-year 100 proof at $100. And then that signaled the end of these near cast strength single barrels coming out. But ever since then, the Knob Creek picks have essentially been locked in at 9 years. Occasionally you can find one that's like 10 years, maybe like on the month. But for the most part, Knob Creek has been just allowing those 9-year picks from this point forward. Now, with the downturn in the bourbon market, I do kind of hope things like this come back and they do allow private groups to do some old single barrels. And hopefully, Hello Again Whiskey Friends is one of them. Number 3. I'll get this one out of the way. I think it's pretty obvious if you watch the channel. I am quite the MGP hound. Like, I love old MGP. At the time that I was really getting into whiskey, 10 years ago, it was almost like people had this stigma about sourced whiskey, which is like funny to say now, considering so much of what I do is like try to find well-priced source whiskey. But I didn't understand the stigma because I loved that MGP profile. Essentially anything that was distilled between 2005 to 2008. That is my jam. And thus gets us into bottles like this one. I just opened this one up recently. A Blom Brothers 12-year cast strength. And at cast strength at only 106 proof. A lot of the MGPs at this time were lower proof, even at cast strength. But I'm using this one as an example. I could just as likely pull up one of the Boone counties that I have a backup of, or Old Scouts. These were my holy grails of what I collected back in 2017 to 2020 while I still could. But what happened to MGP is probably the most drastic of all the lessons that I have learned over the last decade of what can happen to some of these brands. But at the same time that I was falling in love with all of the 10 to 12 year, 13-year MGP that was on the market during the 2017, 2020 era, MGP apparently didn't have a good pipeline of barrels. And come like by 2020, 2021, the only thing you could get anymore was 4-year MGP. It was a complete reset. And not only was it a complete reset, it was a complete reset of the entire flavor profile. Now, luckily, I still love the new flavor profile as compared to the old flavor profile. But let's say the oak, the cherry, the cola notes. Heck, let's get a little nip of this one. I'm going to sit here and do this on memory, but why not just have a little bit of it, Graham? Cheers, everybody. Cheers to Tom. Got the bourbon jerk Glen on that one. Yeah, this one is like a cherry bomb on a pineapple upside down cake with a cinnamon swirl in it, surrounded by this amazing oak profile. Let's go in for a taste. Oh yeah, man, that sweet oak, such a standout. But what lacks on this is now the current markers that I get on current day MGP, even as it's getting up to 10-year single barrels. There's not a lot of honey, graham cracker, or those current markers that are even in my mind when I get MGP blind. This is a completely different profile. A lot of these barrels during this era were even marked Seagrams, and if not Seagrams, LDI, because even MGP, that distillery in Lawrenceburg, changed hands so many times during that era. But the extreme reset, where back in 2020, you could only get 4 years, and then it got up to 5 years, and then it got up to 6 years. I mean, it was a fun era because you got to grow up with this new MGP profile and also see how it was responding to the climates of different states. And now in our current era, we are up to the point where as a group, we can go out there and pick 10-year MGP single barrels again pretty regularly from brands like Copper and Cask, Obtainium, There's lots of opportunities out there if we wanted to go out and get more MGP. But the new era is different than this era. Almost unfair to just name each of them MGP. Despite coming out of the same building and everything else, completely different whiskeys. At this point, we're so many master distillers away from this era. Man, and even like re-exploring the oak profile on this one, God, I haven't had this oak profile in a while. You can see me gushing over it. I absolutely adore this. Number 2. This one is another lesson to not take things for granted while they are on the shelf. But this is something that I really loved hunting from 2021 to about 2023. And now can't find them anymore. But there was an era in those early parts of this decade where you could get single barrels, such as this Lucky 7 14-year proprietor. This is a 133 proof Barton. Price on these varied. They went up year after year. I think the first time I got it at a 14-year, it was $130. And 2 years later, it was like more like 160 for the 15-year single barrels. But during that era, I mean, there was a lot of old Barton going around. The Lucky 7 proprietor is my favorite expression. They were getting some amazing casks. They were especially standout when they were above 130 proof versus some of the lower proof ones that were like 106 proof. I always liked the higher proof ones better. And we can still get the Calumet 16, 15 on the shelves. Those are actually still like one of the better values for an aged whiskey on the shelf today. I mean, I still don't see the value in like the Barton 15 at that price when you can get the Calumet, but there were many brands that were pushing old Barton at the time. Sam Houston was one of them. I think Prideful Goat got some of these casks too and was 15 years old. But then once that old Barton dried up, like it just dried up across the board. It was just out of nowhere. It's like getting the rug swept from under your feet when these brands kind of disappear and the barrels are just gone when they're gone. And sometimes there's just not an old pipeline continuing behind them in their wake like you think there would be. But I've got 2 backups of these Lucky 7 proprietors still. Again, only going to open them in bottle share situations. This is the type of thing really on this list overall. When it comes to my backups that I have from this entire list, it's bottle share only amongst whiskey enthusiasts. That's the only time I'll open these. Maybe on a birthday pour too, but that is it. But man, I gotta be honest. I was talking about this recently. I don't drink Barton like at all. Like Barton completely fell out of my rotation, especially after all these old barrels dried up. Number 1. Now this one's gonna pull my heartstrings a little bit. This one's gonna hit me hard. This was a brand I fell in love with all the way back in early 2019 with their first release ever. But let's talk a bit about Foregate. I actually pulled the Kelvin Collaboration 3 here rather than Kelvin Collaboration 1, just because there was so much in this bottle. We'll get a little nip of this one as we're talking. Ooh, Golden Glen. Hey, cheers, Marty. So yes, I mean, with the Kelvin Collaboration 1, I mean, this was a release that was just utterly amazing to me. It came out at a time where there weren't a lot of these upper tier limited edition whiskeys on the shelf yet. And when it came to getting your hands on a BTAC, it was just becoming impossible. And Foregate came in there. They came in at a high price, $200 a bottle. But they kind of came in there and set themselves up to be that more elevated special whiskey brand. And I adored what they were doing with their finishes. Getting some amazing casks, finishing some old whiskeys, some old Barton. They had some good MGP. I think they had some Four Roses casks. Like they were getting casks from all over the place. And I still have on my shelf Kelvin Collaboration 1 through Kelvin Collaboration 6. And over the years, we then got to know the owners, Bill and Bob. I think they were on the channel 2 to 3 times for different interviews. At one point, I mean, Bill even came on the channel and blinded the whole Kelvin Collaboration series with us. And we got to see his order of his own work as we're going through it as well. All right, let's get on the nose on this one. So this one was Kelvin Collaboration 3. I don't remember the year, if they did have an age statement. I'll have to look up a press release. But this was finished in PX Sherry Dash rum casks. So we always talked about this with Bill and Bob when we were doing interviews. But they always had an interesting naming convention too when it came to their finishes. So sometimes there would be an ampersand as the and sign between the casks. Other times there would be a dash. And what that means is this cask that they finished it in held both rum and sherry inside that cask. So it wasn't different cask, a sherry cask and a rum cask that they blended together. The finishing cask was something that held both of those spirits. Man, and this nose is great. I am getting like a simultaneous blast of that sweet rum and all the fruits from the sherry. And there's some good age underlying in this. All right, in for a sip. Man, that was one thing I always loved about Bill's blends too. Always had great mouthfeel, great finish on these. Gosh, I haven't had this in a while. That was a really, really fun sip. Honestly, I might have liked it a little better than the Blonde Brothers, much as I adore that MGP. And Fourgate had about a 5-year run where they were releasing different blends, different finishes, even some single barrels, some bourbons, some ryes, some boo ryes. They had a good partnership with Kelvin Cooperage, thus the Kelvin Collaborations series. And they were getting some really good casts from Kelvin. Even got to do this whole like split stave series where they would take one barrel and like char 3 or char 4 it, and then take another barrel with like char 1 or char 2. Then they would take the barrels apart and reconstruct them where every other stave came from one of those different barrel types, essentially creating like a zebra barrel. And those split stave releases were so good, especially the Boo Rye one. But really, the last time I saw any Fourgate releases now at this point was in late 2024. Not going to speculate on any of the reasons or get into any of that. But the fact is, it was a brand that I was out there getting a lot of the releases, only for it to just completely disappear and no new releases to come out. Now, the story for me has both a bittersweet ending, I would say, because it just so happened that the Party Source, which is by me in Northern Kentucky, got a whole shipment of Fourgate in, gosh, just a couple months ago in 2026. So essentially almost 2 years after any releases had come out under the brand, and they were discounting them. They used to be $200. Party Source was selling them for $60. So I was able to go in, I bought all the varieties that they have. So I've got a bunch of Fourgates now backed up that I can enjoy Bill's work in future years. And if for whatever reason Fourgate does come back, it's going to be interesting to watch it too, because they'll come back to a different whiskey environment. Even me being a Fourgate mark over here, I mean, you can tell the way that I'm talking. But if you've also been watching the channel, you know recently, like getting me over $100 is tough. I mean, K Luke and Drum Key, and that's about it. That's all I go over for, $100. Like, I almost need to know you and your work for me to spend up that high, because there's so many great single barrels that you can get your hands on right now between $60 to $100. Why pay up, especially when you're just in it for the whiskeys? But if they come back with some unique finishes again, some older whiskeys, not saying I'm out of it, not saying I won't pay $200 for it. I'll probably definitely buy any first release that comes out, let's be honest here. But they would be coming back to a completely different market, even though it's only been a 2-year absence. Man, I love that so much. I'll tell you what, I'm going to take this Fourgate over the Blonde Brothers. I don't think it's just a proof thing either. I think it's from that finish. And the Kelvin Collaboration 3 is actually my third favorite in the series. I like 1 and 2 better. So that's a statement in and of itself right there. But let's do a little bit of a blend here and then we can sign off. Why not? I already poured too much of each of them. Why not blend them together? Woo! Tell you what, that's pretty darn good. On the nose, the sherry and the rum are still shining through, but it took on more of that sweet oak from that 12-year MGP. Let's go in for the taste. I might have found a good blend here. Oh, gosh, yeah. Freaking nailed that blend. Ooh, we're about to go live here in a little bit. I'm going to save that for the live show. Oh, man, ending this video on a high note. Didn't expect that. So what do you think about this topic? And what are the brands that come to mind for you? Leave those in the comment, particularly if you've been in this game for 20, 30 years. I know you've seen so much more than I have in terms of these brands coming and going, the distillate changing. I want to hear about your experiences. And for those that might be finding this bottle that are newer to the hobby, main takeaway, don't take things for granted. They come or go. Some of these eras last a decade, some 5 years, some just 2 or 3 years, and they are gone. So if you like something, back it up. Don't take it for granted. And just remember, while you can always find more whiskey, you can never have enough whiskey friends. So take care of those around you, and we will catch you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for watching. Hello again, whiskey friends, everybody. A big shout out to our amazing Patreon community. If it wasn't for you, we couldn't continue to produce the content and barrel picks week after week. And for everybody else out there, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. It really helps the channel more than you know. And we'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.